Pseudoclasses are similar to classes. The difference is that they're not explicitly defined in the markup and they do not appear in the source code. Unlike most selectors we've discussed, pseudoclasses select elements dynamically based on user interaction, the element's state, and more. Let's take a look. The first two pseudoclasses we'll cover are called link pseudoclasses because they allow us to style links based on whether or not they've been visited or clicked on. So here we're working with an HTML file very similar to the one we used in the previous video on attribute selectors. So here we have a main heading, some links, paragraphs, and form elements below. The file links to style.css, where I've already included a few simple styles using type selectors for the body, paragraphs, form, and input elements. And below that, I've used attribute selectors to style the form elements on the page. And we'll see why in just a bit. So first up in our CSS, we'll go ahead and talk about the link pseudo class. So the link pseudo class allows us to style links that have not been visited. So these are links that haven't been clicked on yet by the user, as we're seeing now. We can select them by first specifying the A element followed by a colon and the word link. So let's give all unvisited links on the page the color red. So we'll type color followed by the value red. Keep in mind that when we use the link pseudo class, it will only select anchor elements that have an href attribute. So if an anchor element does not have an href attribute, the styles will not be applied. So we'll go ahead and save our style sheet, then take a look at it in the browser. When we refresh, we can see how all the links on the page are now red because we've yet to click on any of them. But once we click on one of the links, as we can see here, it then takes on the browser's default visited styles and turns the link purple. But we can also change that visited state. We can use the visited pseudo class to then style links that have been visited or clicked by the user. So let's make all visited links on the page the color green. So we'll type A colon followed by visited. Then we'll give it the color property and the value green. So I'll save the style sheet. And when we refresh the browser, we see that the link we clicked earlier is now green because it's now in a visited state. And if we click on one of the other links, they immediately take on the visited style, and they also turn green. So the next set of pseudo classes we'll cover are considered user action pseudo classes because the styles are applied based on the user's interaction with the element. So first, we have the hover pseudo class, which is applied when the user hovers over an element with a pointing device such as a mouse. So for example, when a user places their cursor over a link. So let's go ahead and add hover styles to our links on the page. So back in our style sheet, we will go ahead and type A colon, then hover. So on hover, we will give our links the color white. We will also remove their text decoration by giving them the value none, followed by a background color of tomato. So I'll save the style sheet, and back in the browser, when we refresh and hover over any of the links, we can see those new hover styles applied by the browser. But links aren't the only elements we can apply the hover pseudo classes to. We can actually apply them to any element, like headings, images, divs, and so forth. So if, for example, we change the A element selector to the paragraph selector, when we save the file and refresh, we can see the hover styles applied to all paragraphs on the page. So they take on the tomato red background and white font color. And if we then change the P to, say, H1, we'll then see the hover styles only applied to the main heading. So we'll go ahead and keep the hover styles for the links for now. So next up, we can also use an active pseudo class that gets applied when an element is being activated by the user. An example of this is when a user presses the mouse to click on a link or a button. But once the mouse is let go, the button or link are no longer considered active. So just like the hover pseudo class, active can be applied to any element, not only links or buttons. So let's go ahead and give our links on the page an active state. So below our visited state, we'll go ahead and type A:active. We'll then give them a font size of 26 pixels. So we'll save our style sheet and refresh the browser and click on a link. We can see that the active styles are applied between the time we press the mouse button and release it. So now it's active, now it's not. The last user action pseudo class we'll cover is the focus pseudo class. The focus pseudo class is only applied to interactive elements like links and form elements. The styles are applied as soon as the element has received focus. So what do I mean by that? Well, focus happens when a browser discovers that a user is ready to interact with an element. So for example, when a user clicks inside a form field, that text field is said to have focus because the user is ready to interact with the field by typing in it. So back in our style sheet, we'll first type the input element followed by a colon, then the focus pseudo class. We'll then give it a background color of yellow. So we'll go ahead and save our style sheet. And in the browser, when we refresh and tab through the links, we can see them take on that focus state with the yellow background. If we need to add focus styles to the text fields and links, we can simply remove the element selector altogether and leave the focus pseudo class by itself. So I'll go ahead and remove this A element in front of the focus pseudo class. So when we save this and refresh, I will go ahead and tab through the links and form fields, and we see that they each take on the focus styles, the yellow background, once they obtain that focus state. So as we can see, focus will actually select any element that's ready to receive user input or interaction.